At 2:13 in the morning, Evelyn Hart sat alone in a Baltimore Mafia lounge, slowly drinking tequila while the most feared crime boss in the city watched her from the shadows. She didn't know his name yet. She didn't know that before sunrise, blood would lead him straight to her door. Maybe you know what it feels like to be overlooked, to sit quietly while people mistake your silence for weakness, your kindness for surrender, and your scars for failure. Evelyn knew that feeling better than anyone. But this is not just a story about a woman who caught a dangerous man's attention. It is about betrayal, buried truth, and what happens when two broken people discover that trust can be more powerful than fear. Watch closely, because the woman everyone underestimates is about to change the Baltimore underworld forever. Like the video and comment where you're watching from. The woman everyone underestimated had already made one dangerous choice that night. 6 hours before she entered the Black Harbor, Evelyn Hart stood beneath a surgical lamp in the basement of a condemned dental office, her hands buried in the open abdomen of a 19-year-old dock worker. Rain hammered the boarded windows above them. Water ticked through a rusted pipe in the ceiling. Somewhere on the street, a police siren rose and faded into the distance. Inside the basement, the only sounds were the steady pulse of a portable monitor and the sharp rhythm of Evelyn's voice. Clamp. Lena Ortiz placed the instrument into her hand. The young man on the table was pale beneath the light. Blood soaked the folded sheets under his body and ran toward the drain in thin red streams. Lena looked at the monitor. Pressure is dropping. I can see that. We need a hospital. Evelyn did not look up. If we take him to Mercy, they call the police before they finish triage. He could die here. He could disappear there. Lena stared at her across the table. You do not know that. Evelyn pressed 2 fingers into the wound and found the source of the bleeding. I know the restraint marks on his wrists are fresh. I know someone cut the label out of his jacket. I know he flinched when you said police. The monitor beeped faster. Evelyn's voice remained calm. Suction. Lena obeyed. For the next 12 minutes, there was no room for fear. Evelyn worked with the precision of someone who had spent years inside trauma rooms where every second had a price. Her hands moved through muscle and blood with quiet certainty. She found the torn vessel, controlled the bleeding, and repaired the damage with tools that had been sterilized in an old autoclave 2 rooms away. The basement was illegal. The surgery was not approved. The equipment was mismatched. But Evelyn's hands were still the hands of a surgeon. Nothing a medical board had written could change that. When the monitor finally settled into a steady rhythm, Lena released a breath she had been holding for too long. He is stable, for now. Evelyn stepped back from the table. Only then did she notice the blood on her right hand. A broken ampule had cut across one of her knuckles earlier in the evening. She had covered it with gauze, but the bandage had come loose during the procedure. Lena followed her gaze. You need stitches. I need coffee. You need sleep. Evelyn pulled off her gloves. I have tried sleep. It is overrated. Lena gave her a tired look. You say that because you never actually do it. Evelyn moved to the small sink and turned on the water. The pipes groaned. Brown water spat from the faucet before running clear. Behind her, the young man stirred. His eyelids fluttered open. Lena crossed toward him, but Evelyn lifted a hand, slowly. The dock worker looked from Evelyn to the surgical light above him. His breathing quickened. Where am I? Somewhere safe. No hospitals. You are not in one. No cops. No cops. His shoulders loosened by less than an inch. Evelyn returned to the table and checked his pupils. What is your name? He hesitated. Ryan. Your real name? Another pause. Tyler. Last name? He closed his eyes. Evelyn watched him carefully. I am not asking because I want to report you. I am asking because if you stop breathing again, it helps to know who I am trying to keep alive. His eyes opened. Tyler Boone. How old are you? 19. What happened to you? Tyler looked toward the steel door. Nothing. Evelyn glanced at the wound she had just closed. Someone stabbed you below the ribs, tied your wrists, and left you behind a loading yard. That is not nothing. His jaw tightened. Lena stepped closer. You came from Pier 9, didn't you? Tyler's gaze snapped toward her. The reaction was small, but it was enough. Lena's face changed. My brother works there. Tyler said nothing. His name is Mateo Ortiz, Lena continued. He drives the night forklift near the East Containers. Evelyn saw fear move across Tyler's face. Not confusion, recognition. She leaned closer. "What is happening at Pier 9? Tyler swallowed. "I cannot tell you. Then tell us whether Mateo is in danger." Tyler stared at the ceiling. A tear slipped from the corner of his eye and disappeared into his hair. They were talking about moving something before midnight. Who I do not know names. What were they moving? Crates, guns, maybe. I did not look inside. Lena stepped closer. "Why did they stab you?" Tyler's breathing became shallow again. I heard them talking about what a missing container. A man named Vale. Someone said Crow wanted him brought to the cold storage yard tomorrow night. The basement seemed to contract around them. Even Lena went still. Baltimore had many names. People spoke carefully. Vale was one of them. Crow was another. Evelyn took Tyler's wrist and checked his pulse. "What else?" He shook his head. "That is all. You recognized Mateo." Tyler looked at Lena. "He helped me once, when a supervisor tried to blame me for a damaged shipment. Is he involved?" "No." The answer came quickly. "Then why is he in danger?" Tyler turned his face away. "Because he saw the crates." Lena covered her mouth. Evelyn watched Tyler for another moment, then pulled the blanket higher over his chest. "You are staying here until morning. I need to leave. You can barely lift your head. They will look for me. Let them." Tyler stared at her. For the first time he seemed to understand that the woman standing over him was not frightened by the men who had nearly killed him. That did not mean she was fearless. It meant fear did not make her decisions. Lena followed Evelyn into the supply room and shut the door. "You heard him, yes. Mateo is at Pier 9. I heard that too. We need to call him." Lena pulled out her phone and tried. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Evelyn opened a cabinet and removed a clean bandage for her hand. Lena paced the narrow room. "We should go to the police. Tyler said the shipment is connected to Crow. That does not mean the police are involved." "No. It means we do not know which police are involved." Lena stopped moving. "So what do we do?" Evelyn rapped her knuckles slowly. On the work table beside her sat the clothes Tyler had been wearing when 2 sanitation workers found him bleeding behind the loading yard. His jacket was torn. One sleeve was dark with blood. Something black protruded from the inner pocket. Evelyn pulled it free. It was a matchbook. Silver letters were pressed into the cover. The Black Harbor. Lena looked at it. That place near the inner harbor? You know it. Everyone knows it. No one ordinary goes inside. Evelyn opened the matchbook. 3 matches were missing. A phone number had been written across the inside cover in blue ink. Beneath it were 2 words. Pier 9. Lena shook her head before Evelyn spoke. "No, I have not said anything. You are thinking it. I am thinking someone at that lounge knows what is happening tonight, and you plan to walk in there and ask no. Good. I plan to listen." Lena stared at her. "That is worse." Evelyn placed the matchbook in her coat pocket. "I will go and find out whether Mateo is still at the pier and leave. You do not belong in a place like that." Evelyn looked at the blood on her sleeve. "I do not belong in this basement either." Lena's expression softened. That was the part neither of them said aloud. 3 years earlier, Evelyn Hart had belonged inside one of the most respected trauma centers in Maryland. She had been the surgeon other doctors called when a case became too complicated. She had been awake for 30 hours the night a 27-year-old woman arrived at St. Catherine Medical Center after a highway collision. The patient was bleeding internally. Her blood pressure was collapsing. The approved medication did not work as expected. Evelyn opened a second package and found a strange cloudiness in the vial. She reported it. The charge nurse told her to wait for pharmacy approval. The patient did not have time to wait. Evelyn used an alternative medication, began surgery, and saved her life. 2 days later, hospital administrators called Evelyn into a conference room. They did not ask why the medication was contaminated. They asked why she had broken protocol. Within a month, several nurses withdrew their statements. A laboratory report disappeared. The hospital attorney claimed Evelyn had endangered the patient through reckless judgment. Halcyon Biotech, the company that manufactured the medication, denied any defect. By the end of the year, Evelyn had lost her hospital privileges. By the next spring, her medical license was suspended. The official documents called her unstable, arrogant, uncooperative. No official document mentioned that the patient had survived because Evelyn refused to wait for permission. Lena watched her now. "You can still stay here. And if Mateo dies while we stay here, Lena looked toward the operating room. That is not fair. No. Evelyn slipped on her coat. But it is true. The Black Harbor stood above a closed seafood restaurant on a narrow street where rain collected in the gutters and reflected the red glow of traffic lights. There was no sign on the entrance, only a black door and a brass handle polished by expensive hands. A man in a dark suit guarded the entrance. His eyes moved over Evelyn's damp coat, plain sweater, and worn leather shoes. This is a private club. Evelyn held up the matchbook. His expression changed. Who gave you that A patient? What patient? One who will live if I am not kept standing in the rain. The guard studied her for several seconds. Then he opened the door. Inside, warm air carried the smell of whiskey, old wood, and cigar smoke. A staircase led upward. At the top, Evelyn entered a room that did not look like a place where men arranged killings. The light was soft. A jazz trumpet played from hidden speakers. Crystal glasses lined the bar. Men and women sat in quiet groups speaking with the restrained focus of people who understood that every word might travel farther than intended. Evelyn chose a seat at the end of the bar. From there she could see the main entrance in the mirror, the kitchen door to her right, and the emergency stairwell behind a velvet curtain. The bartender approached. "What can I get you, tequila?" He looked at the blood on her hand. "Rough night. It is not over." He poured the drink. Evelyn placed the matchbook on the counter. The bartender noticed it, but his face revealed nothing. "I am looking for someone who works at Pier 9. Lots of people work at Pier 9. Mateo Ortiz." The bartender polished a glass. Never heard of him. Evelyn watched his hands. His right thumb stopped moving when she said the name. He knew something. Before she could press further, a man entered the lounge through the private rear door. The change in the room was immediate. No one announced him. No one needed to. Conversations lowered. Chairs shifted. The bartender placed the glass down more carefully. Dominic Vale walked inside with Marcus Reed at his side. He wore a charcoal suit beneath a black overcoat. Rain darkened his shoulders. His expression was calm, but there was nothing relaxed about the way he entered a room. He noticed every person before they had time to look away. Dominic crossed to a table in the shadowed corner. A shipping broker waited there with a leather folder and a glass he had not touched. Marcus sat to Dominic's right. Dominic remained standing for a moment. His gaze moved over the room. Then it reached Evelyn. She felt it before she looked toward him. The sensation was not admiration. It was the unmistakable awareness of being measured. Evelyn lifted her tequila and let her eyes pass over his table as though he were no different from anyone else. That was when Dominic noticed the mirror. He saw her use it to check the front entrance without turning her head. He saw her count the guards. He saw the matchbook near her hand. The shipping broker opened his folder. One of the containers was redirected before it reached the customs yard. Dominic did not look down. By whom we are still confirming. Marcus glanced at Evelyn, then back at Dominic. The broker continued. The manifest was altered under a Vale authorization code. Dominic finally turned toward him. Whose code? The man hesitated. Caleb Mercer's. Marcus's expression hardened. Dominic remained still. Does Caleb know you are here, number good? The broker lowered his voice. There is more. Crow's people have been asking about the cold storage property near the rail yard. Dominic closed the folder. Who told them about it, I do not know. That is not an answer. The broker swallowed. Dominic's gaze drifted back toward Evelyn. She was speaking to the bartender again. Marcus leaned closer. You hearing any of this? No. Marcus followed his line of sight. The woman at the bar, she is watching the exits, so are half the people here. She checked the reflection before the front door opened. Marcus looked toward the entrance. The door opened. 3 men stepped inside. Ray Dugan entered first. Dominic recognized him as a waterfront collector who had recently begun doing small jobs for Vanessa Crow. Ray saw Evelyn. A smile spread across his face. Marcus sighed. That will end badly. Dominic leaned back in his chair. For him, Marcus looked at Evelyn, who was still holding her glass. For someone. Ray approached the bar. The bartender stepped away. Evelyn saw the movement in the mirror. She also saw Dominic watching from the dark corner. She did not know his name yet, but she knew power when a room bent around it. Ray placed one hand beside her glass. "You are sitting in my seat." Evelyn looked at the 14 empty stools beside her. "The others appear available." His two men laughed. Ray moved closer. "I did not ask about the others." Evelyn turned her head. For 1 second, her gaze traveled over him. She saw the uneven weight on his left knee, the old fracture in his wrist, the pulse jumping quickly beneath his jaw. A man trying to appear relaxed while his body prepared for violence. She faced the bar again, then asked a better question. Ray's smile disappeared. Across the room, Marcus shifted forward. Dominic placed one hand on his arm. "Wait." Ray touched Evelyn's shoulder. The entire lounge seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn looked down at his hand. "Remove it." Ray bent close enough for her to smell the whiskey on his breath. "What happens if I do not?" Her fingers moved toward the metal cocktail pick beside her glass. "You spend 6 months learning how to hold a fork." Ray laughed. He tightened his grip. Evelyn moved before the sound left his throat. She caught his wrist, turned her body, and drove the narrow metal point into the nerve above his forearm. His fingers opened instantly. His arm dropped. The laughter stopped. Ray stared at his hand as though it belonged to someone else. "What did you do?" Evelyn stood. She pulled the cocktail pick free and wiped it against his sleeve. "Your radial nerve is temporarily compromised." He swung with his other hand. She stepped aside and drove the edge of her shoe into the side of his knee. Ray collapsed against the bar. His men reached inside their coats. Dominic rose. "Take your hands out of your jackets." The command was quiet. It carried through the room like a gunshot. The two men froze. Dominic crossed the lounge. Ray looked up from the floor. "Vale, this woman attacked me. You touched her after she told you not to." Dominic stopped beside Evelyn. "That made the outcome your decision." Evelyn picked up her tequila. She finished it without taking her eyes off Ray. Then she reached for her coat. Dominic noticed the blood on her hand. "You were already injured. Occupational hazard." "What occupation?" She slipped one arm into her coat. "Not your business." Dominic looked at the matchbook on the bar. "You came here looking for something." Evelyn followed his gaze. So did everyone else. She picked up the matchbook and walked toward the door. "Do I get your name?" Dominic asked. She did not stop. "No." The door closed behind her. Rain struck the glass as she disappeared into the street. Marcus came to stand beside Dominic. "You want Dugan removed?" Dominic looked down at Ray. "No." Ray exhaled. Dominic returned his attention to the window. "I want him to remember exactly how this felt." Marcus studied Evelyn's empty seat, and the woman Dominic watched her shadow move beneath a distant street lamp. "Find out who she is." Everything. Marcus remained quiet. Dominic noticed the blue ink that had rubbed from the matchbook onto the bar. Pier 9. His expression changed. The woman had not wandered into the Black Harbor by accident. She had come searching for the same war that was moving toward him. Outside, Evelyn turned onto a narrower street and pulled out her phone. Lena answered on the first ring. "Did you find Mateo?" "Not yet." "Then come back." Evelyn glanced behind her. The street appeared empty, but a black sedan had turned the corner half a block away. "I am heading to the pier." "Evelyn, I need to know whether he is there. You said you would listen and leave." I listened. And Evelyn watched the sedan slow, and now I know someone is lying. At Dominic's table, the shipping broker reopened the leather folder. Inside was a photograph taken near Pier 9. It showed a row of freight containers beneath the floodlights. In the corner of the image stood Tyler Boone. Beside him was Lena's brother, Mateo Ortiz. Dominic looked at the timestamp. It had been taken 3 hours earlier. Marcus returned from a call. "I have her name." Dominic waited. "Evelyn Hart, former trauma surgeon. License revoked 3 years ago." Dominic looked toward the door through which she had disappeared. "Former, that is what the record says." Dominic placed the photograph beside the faint blood mark she had left on the bar. Records say many things. His phone vibrated. A message appeared from Caleb Mercer. "The informant is ready. Cold storage yard tomorrow night." Dominic read it twice. Then he looked at Tyler's photograph again. Too many separate roads were leading toward the same place. A missing shipment, a wounded dock worker, a former surgeon carrying a Black Harbor matchbook. and a meeting arranged by one of the few men Dominic had trusted for years. Across the city, Evelyn stepped into the rain and began walking toward Pier 9. Behind her, the black sedan kept its distance. At the harbor, cranes moved through the fog like enormous shadows. Containers rose from cargo ships and vanished into rows of steel. Somewhere among them, Mateo Ortiz was still alive. Evelyn tightened her coat and crossed the final intersection. A security gate stood ahead. Beyond it, she saw a forklift moving between the containers. Then the lights along the eastern loading lane went dark one by one, not from a power failure. Someone was turning them off. Evelyn stopped beneath the last working lamp. From inside the pier came the muffled sound of a man shouting. Then a gunshot. The gate began to slide open. The gate opened 3 feet, then stopped. Evelyn did not move. Rain struck the metal bars and slid down in silver lines. Beyond the opening, the dark lane between the containers looked empty, but the silence felt arranged. The gunshot had come from somewhere deeper inside the pier. A second sound followed. Metal scraping concrete. Then a man groaned. Evelyn reached into her coat and wrapped her fingers around the small folding knife she kept in the inner pocket. It was not a weapon meant for fighting. It was a tool for cutting gauze-opening packaging and slicing clothing away from wounds. Tonight, it would have to be enough. She stepped through the gate. The black sedan remained half a block behind her. Its headlights were off now. Evelyn looked toward it once, then continued into the pier. Rows of freight containers towered on both sides of the loading lane. Red, blue, and rust-brown walls formed narrow corridors that turned every sound into an echo. Water ran beneath the wheels of parked trailers. High above, a crane moved slowly through the fog. The forklift she had seen earlier was stopped beside an open container. Its engine was still running. The driver's seat was empty. Evelyn approached from the side. A man lay behind the forklift. He wore a security jacket and a reflective vest. Blood spread beneath his shoulder. She dropped beside him. His eyes opened when she touched his neck. "Do not move." He tried to lift his head. "Gun." "I know. No. He has a gun." Evelyn pressed her palm against the wound. The bullet had entered high in the chest near the collarbone. Blood pulsed through her fingers. "Who shot you?" The man stared past her. His pupils widened. Evelyn turned. A figure moved between 2 containers. She pulled the wounded guard behind the forklift as another gunshot cracked through the lane. The bullet struck the metal frame above her and threw sparks across the wet pavement. The guard gasped. Evelyn kept pressure on the wound with one hand and reached for his radio with the other. Static filled the speaker. "Security East loading lane. Officer down." No answer. She tried again. Nothing. The radio had been jammed or the security team was already compromised. The guard gripped her sleeve. "Mateo." Evelyn looked at him. "You know Mateo Ortiz. He tried to stop them. Where is he?" The guard lifted one shaking finger toward the containers. "Warehouse 4. His hand fell. Evelyn checked his pulse. Still present. Weak. She removed her scarf, folded it into a thick pad, and pressed it over the wound. "You need to hold this." "I cannot." "Yes, you can." His face tightened with pain. Evelyn placed his hand over the scarf and pushed down. "Keep pressure here. Do not lift it to look. Do not move unless you see fire." The guard stared at her. "Who are you?" "Someone having a very long night." She stood. The shooter had not fired again. That meant he had moved. Evelyn backed toward the darkness between 2 containers, keeping the forklift between herself and the open lane. She heard footsteps to her left. Not running. Careful, searching. Evelyn slipped into the narrow passage between the containers and moved toward Warehouse 4. Her phone vibrated inside her pocket. "Lena," Evelyn answered without speaking. "Where are you?" Lena asked. "At the pier. Mateo just called me." Evelyn stopped. "When 30 seconds ago." The call lasted 4 seconds. "What did he say?" "He said warehouse and then someone took the phone. Did you hear anything else, men shouting? Something about a truck?" Evelyn looked toward the warehouse roofs beyond the container yard. "Called emergency services. You told me the police might be involved. There is a man bleeding beside the east loading lane. Tell them there has been a shooting. Do not mention Mateo. Evelyn, leave. I am close." Close to what Evelyn saw movement ahead. A man stepped out from behind a container. She ended the call and moved into shadow. He wore dark work clothes and carried a pistol low beside his leg, not a dock worker. He passed within 6 feet of her. Evelyn waited until his back turned. Then she stepped behind him and pressed the folding knife beneath his ear. "Drop it." The man froze. His hand tightened around the pistol. Evelyn pressed harder. "There are 3 large blood vessels beneath this blade. I only need 1. He slowly opened his fingers. The pistol fell into a puddle. "Kick it away." He obeyed. "Where is Mateo Ortiz? I do not know." Evelyn shifted the blade. His breath stopped. Wrong answer. Warehouse 4. How many men? 6. Who are they working for? The man hesitated. Evelyn saw the pulse move beneath his skin. Crow. Why is Mateo alive? He saw something he should not have. What I do not know. She believed that part. What is inside the container's rifles? Whose rifles? Vale's. The pieces aligned. The missing shipment. The matchbook. Tyler's wound. Mateo's call. Someone was moving Dominic Vale's weapons through Pier 9 and preparing to blame him for whatever happened next. Evelyn leaned closer. Who is meeting Crow tomorrow? I do not know. His right shoulder shifted. He was preparing to turn. Evelyn drove 2 fingers into the nerve above his elbow. His hand opened uselessly. Before he could shout, she struck the side of his neck with the heel of her palm. His knees gave way. She lowered him to the ground and took the pistol. It felt heavier than she expected. She checked the safety, then placed it inside her coat. The black sedan entered the pier behind her. Its headlights remained dark. Evelyn moved faster. Warehouse 4 stood near the river, a long brick structure with broken windows and faded white numbers painted above the loading doors. One door was partially open. Light spilled through the gap. Evelyn approached from the side and looked inside. Stacks of wooden crates filled the warehouse. Some had been opened. Black rifles rested in foam packing. Mateo Ortiz sat in a chair near the center of the floor. His hands were tied behind him. Blood ran from his forehead. 3 armed men stood nearby. A 4th man spoke on the phone beside a table covered with shipping documents. "We moved the last truck before 3, he said. "Crow wants the building empty before Vale checks the pier." Evelyn remained behind the door. The man continued. "The meeting is still on. Cold storage yard tomorrow night." A pause. "No. Mercer confirmed he will come." Evelyn's attention sharpened. Mercer. She did not know the name, but she remembered the message written on Dominic's face when the shipping broker mentioned Caleb Mercer's authorization code. The man ended the call. One of the others looked toward Mateo. "What do we do with him?" "Put him in the truck. He saw our faces. He will not see morning." Mateo lifted his head. His eyes found the open loading door. For 1 second he saw Evelyn. His expression changed. She raised 1 finger to her lips. The black sedan stopped outside. 2 doors opened. The men in the warehouse heard it. "Who is that?" The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Gunfire erupted near the main entrance. The armed men scattered. Evelyn entered low and moved behind a stack of crates. Muzzle flashes cut through the darkness. Someone shouted. A body struck the floor. Evelyn crawled toward Mateo. He heard her before he saw her. "Who is there? Lena sent me." "Evelyn, keep your voice down." She reached the chair and cut through the rope around his wrists. Another gunshot hit the crate behind them. Wood splintered over her coat. Mateo flinched. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "No." "Good enough." She pulled his arm over her shoulder and guided him toward the rear exit. A man appeared between the crates. Evelyn raised the pistol. Her hands were steady, but her finger remained outside the trigger guard. "Move," the man said. She did not. He lifted his weapon. A shot exploded from the darkness behind him. The man dropped. Dominic Vale stepped through the smoke. His gun remained pointed toward the floor where the man had fallen. Marcus appeared beside him. "You followed me," Evelyn said. Dominic looked at Mateo leaning against her. "You walked into a weapons transfer alone. You investigated me. That was before you gave me a reason. This is not your reason." Dominic moved closer. One of Crow's men fired from the upper walkway. Dominic pushed Evelyn and Mateo behind the crates as Marcus returned fire. The bullet struck Dominic near his side. His body twisted. He fired once toward the walkway. The shooter fell backward over the railing. Dominic remained standing for 2 seconds. Then one hand pressed against his abdomen. Blood spread between his fingers. Evelyn saw the location and felt cold move through her chest. "Sit down." Dominic looked toward the remaining gunfire. "No, you have been shot, I noticed," Marcus shouted from near the entrance. "More vehicles coming." Dominic turned toward him. "Get Mateo out." Mateo shook his head. "They have another truck by the river." Marcus grabbed his arm. "Then we are leaving before it arrives." Evelyn stepped in front of Dominic. "Show me the wound, not here." "You might not have a choice." Another burst of gunfire struck the far wall. Dominic caught Evelyn by the arm and pulled her through the rear of the warehouse. They moved toward a maintenance corridor while Marcus supported Mateo behind them. The corridor ended at a steel door. Dominic forced it open. Cold rain hit them. Beyond the building, the river was black beneath the fog. A narrow service road curved toward the loading docks. The black sedan waited 20 yards away. Its rear door was open. Marcus guided Mateo inside. Dominic took 3 steps toward the car. His knees failed. Evelyn caught him before he struck the pavement. He was heavier than he looked. She lowered him against the side of the sedan and pulled his hand away from the wound. Blood covered his palm. The bullet had entered beneath his ribs. There was no exit wound. Evelyn pressed both hands over the injury. Dominic looked at her. "You should go with Mateo. I am not leaving you. That would be the intelligent choice." "You are bleeding too much to lecture me about intelligence." Marcus opened the driver door. "We need a doctor." Dominic's gaze remained on Evelyn. "We have one." The words hung between them. Evelyn looked toward the pier entrance. Red and blue lights reflected faintly through the fog. Emergency services were approaching. So were the vehicles Marcus had seen. They could not stay. "Where is your nearest safe house?" she asked. "Compromised. Private clinic watched. Hospital." Dominic almost smiled. "No hospitals." Evelyn tightened the pressure. His face lost color. "You need surgery, I know. You could be bleeding internally, I know. If the bullet damaged your liver, you have less time than you think." His eyes remained clear. "Then stop explaining and decide." Evelyn looked at Marcus. "My apartment is 4 blocks east of Patterson Park." Marcus shook his head. "Too exposed. It has medical supplies, enough for a gunshot wound, enough to keep him alive." Dominic's breathing had become shallow. He looked at Marcus. "Take Mateo to Lena." And you, Dominic, looked at Evelyn. "I am going with her." Marcus hesitated. "You barely know her." Evelyn answered before Dominic could. "He knows where I live." Marcus looked at Dominic. Dominic did not deny it. Another vehicle entered the pier. Headlights swept across the service road. Marcus made the decision. He pushed Mateo deeper into the sedan. "I will send another car." "No," Dominic said. "They may be tracking our vehicles." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I am not leaving you here. You are taking the witness." Mateo looked toward Dominic. "I did not see everything. You saw enough to make them afraid." Dominic turned to Marcus. "Go." Marcus entered the driver's seat. Before closing the door, he looked at Evelyn. "If he dies, every man in this city will assume you killed him." Evelyn kept pressure on the wound. "That is not especially motivating." Marcus almost smiled despite himself. Then the sedan pulled away. Evelyn and Dominic were left beneath the rain. The approaching headlights drew closer. Dominic tried to stand. Evelyn caught his arm. "You cannot walk." "I can walk 4 blocks. You can barely breathe." "Then I will do both badly." She moved beneath his shoulder. Together they crossed the service road and disappeared between the containers. Behind them, 2 dark vehicles stopped outside Warehouse 4. Men stepped out with rifles. Vanessa Crow's second team had arrived. Evelyn guided Dominic through the container yard, choosing the narrowest passages. His weight increased with every step. Blood soaked through his shirt and warmed her hand. "You planned this?" she asked. "The shooting." "The black sedan." "I had Marcus follow you. That is not better. You entered a criminal pier alone. I was looking for Mateo. You found him. You found your weapons." "Also true." Dominic stumbled. Evelyn pushed him against a container wall. "Stay awake. I am awake." "What is your full name?" He looked at her. "You know it. I need to hear you say it." "Dominic Elias Vale." "How old are you?" 36. "Where were you born?" "Baltimore." "What day is it?" He looked toward the sky. "An unpleasant one." Evelyn pressed harder against the wound. "Answer." "Thursday." "It is Friday." His eyes narrowed. Then I have lost more blood than I thought. The distant voices grew louder. Flashlights moved between the containers behind them. Evelyn pulled Dominic forward. They reached the eastern fence. The gate was locked. Dominic removed a small pistol from beneath his coat. Evelyn stared at him. "You had another gun. I usually do." He fired once into the lock. The shot echoed across the pier. "So much for leaving quietly," Evelyn said. He pushed the gate open. They entered the street. The rain had emptied the sidewalks. Dominic's steps became slower. By the time they reached the second block, he was leaning heavily against her. "You can let me fall," he said. "No, you do not know what follows me. I have met some of it. You have met the smallest part." Evelyn looked at him. "Then try not to die before you explain the rest." He gave a faint laugh. The sound turned into a strained breath. At the third block, Dominic stopped. His hand closed around Evelyn's sleeve. "Someone inside my organization gave them the warehouse, Caleb Mercer." Dominic looked at her. "You heard the name Inside Warehouse 4. What did they say that Mercer confirmed you would attend a meeting at the cold storage yard?" Dominic's face changed. Not surprise, something deeper. Recognition mixed with refusal. "You trust him," Evelyn said. "He was with me when my father died. Then either he betrayed you or someone wants you to believe he did." Dominic looked back toward the harbor. The city lights blurred through the rain. They used his authorization code on the missing shipment. Codes can be stolen, not his. Evelyn adjusted his arm around her shoulders, then stay alive long enough to ask him. They reached her building. The rear entrance opened into a narrow alley. Evelyn searched her pocket for the key. Dominic's knees gave way again. This time she could not keep him standing. He slid down the brick wall and landed beneath the fire escape. His eyes closed. "Dominic." No response. She touched his neck. His pulse was rapid and weak. The blood beneath his shirt had spread almost to his hip. Evelyn looked up at the dark windows of her apartment. Then down the alley. A vehicle turned onto the street. She had seconds. Evelyn unlocked the rear door, grabbed Dominic beneath his arms, and dragged him inside. His shoes struck each stair as she pulled him toward the second floor. By the time she reached her apartment, her lungs burned. She opened the door, dragged him across the floor, and locked it behind them. Dominic opened his eyes as she cut through his shirt. His hand moved toward his weapon. Evelyn took it first. She pointed the pistol beneath his jaw. "Do that again, and I let you bleed." His grip loosened. "You searched me. You brought half the harbor into my home." "Fair." Evelyn examined the wound beneath the kitchen light. The bullet had entered at an angle. There was swelling around the tissue. His abdomen was becoming rigid. She looked at him. "You need an operating room." "No. You may have internal bleeding. No hospitals. That is not a medical opinion. It is the only one that keeps you alive." Evelyn understood what he meant. If she called emergency services, Vanessa's people might find him. The police might arrest him. His own organization might bring another war to her door. She looked toward the locked cabinet beneath the sink. Inside were instruments, sutures, antibiotics, and the last supplies from the clinic. Not enough for surgery. Enough for a chance. Dominic watched her expression. "You are deciding whether I am worth the risk." Evelyn unlocked the cabinet. "No." She pulled out the medical case and placed it on the table. "I am deciding how much of my kitchen I need to disinfect." His eyes closed again. Evelyn slapped his cheek lightly. "Stay with me. I am here." "What is my name?" One corner of his mouth moved. "Evelyn Hart. You investigated me. Yes. You are going to explain that when you wake up. If I wake up." Evelyn cut away the blood-soaked fabric. "You will. You sound certain." "I am not." She met his eyes. "But you came to my door alive, Dominic Vale." She placed the scalpel against his skin. "So do not make me regret opening it." Dominic tried to answer, but the anesthetic had already begun to soften the edges of his awareness. Evelyn placed the pistol on top of the refrigerator well beyond his reach, then pulled the kitchen table into the center of the room. She covered it with clean sheets, switched on every lamp she owned, and opened the black medical case. The instruments inside were arranged with the care of someone who had never truly stopped being a surgeon. Scalpel, forceps, sutures, antibiotics, sterile gauze, a compact ultrasound device with a cracked screen. Dominic watched her through half-closed eyes. You keep all that beneath your sink, I keep cleaning supplies beneath my sink. She cut the rest of his shirt away. This was behind the flour. The bullet had entered below his right ribs and traveled at an angle. The blood looked worse than the injury, but the swelling beneath the skin worried her. Evelyn applied gel to the ultrasound probe and moved it across his abdomen. Dominic's muscles tightened. Cold, no. Pain, yes. That is not useful. You asked a simple question, and somehow you still made it difficult. The screen flickered. Evelyn leaned closer. She searched for free fluid around the liver, the spleen, and the spaces where blood liked to hide. Nothing obvious. She checked again. Still nothing. Her shoulders loosened slightly. The bullet had missed the major organs. It was lodged deep in the muscle near his side, close enough to the abdominal cavity to frighten her, but not deep enough to kill him in the next 10 minutes. His rigid abdomen came from pain and guarding, not a ruptured organ. She looked at him. You are lucky. Dominic's mouth moved faintly. I have never heard that before. The bullet stayed outside the abdominal cavity. So I live. If I remove it cleanly, control the bleeding, and you avoid infection. That sounded less certain. It was. Evelyn washed her hands, pulled on gloves, and positioned the surgical light. Dominic watched her prepare the local anesthetic. You could still leave. She filled the syringe. This is my apartment. You know what I mean. Yes. She inserted the needle around the wound. His jaw tightened, but he did not move. You could call someone, he said. Give them my location. Walk away before they arrive. Evelyn injected another section. And what would happen to you, that depends on who answers first. That is not reassuring. It was not meant to be. She set down the syringe and picked up the scalpel. Do you always try to frighten people while they are saving your life? Usually they are already frightened. Evelyn met his eyes. I am not. Dominic studied her face as if searching for the lie. He did not find one. That seemed to disturb him more than fear would have. Evelyn made the first incision. His fingers tightened around the edge of the table. She worked slowly, widening the wound only as much as necessary. Blood welled beneath the light. She controlled it with gauze, located the torn muscle, and followed the bullet's path. The apartment disappeared around her. The rain vanished. The city vanished. There was only tissue blood pressure and the measured rhythm of Dominic's breathing. For the first time in 3 years, Evelyn did not feel like a disgraced doctor working in hiding. She felt like herself. Stay awake, she said. Dominic's eyes opened. I am awake. What did Caleb Mercer mean to you? His gaze sharpened. That is an unusual surgical question. It is keeping you alert. He was 20 when I met him. Evelyn reached deeper with the forceps. Dominic's breath caught. He worked for my father, he continued. He was eager, reckless. He thought loyalty meant never asking questions. And you trusted him. I taught him to ask better questions. Did he for years. The forceps touched metal. Evelyn adjusted her grip. What happened to your father? Dominic became still. She looked toward his face. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling. He was shot outside St. Michael's Church. How old were you, 23? Were you there? Yes. The answer came without emotion, but Evelyn heard what lived beneath it. She saw a young man standing on church steps while his father bled onto stone. She saw him learning in a single moment that love could become evidence and trust could become a weapon. Did Caleb see it happen? She asked. He held pressure on the wound while I called for help. Evelyn found the bullet. She closed the forceps around it. And now you think he sold you to Vanessa Crowe. I think someone used his name. That is not the same thing. No. Which one do you believe? Dominic turned his head toward her. I do not believe anything until I can prove it. Evelyn pulled the bullet free. It landed in the metal tray with a small, hard sound. Dominic looked toward it. Is that mine? It was. She controlled the remaining bleeding, repaired the muscle, and closed the incision. By the time she finished, sweat had dampened the hair at her temples. Dominic's skin was pale. His pulse remained too fast, but it was stronger than before. Evelyn cleaned the blood from his side and covered the wound. Done. Dominic looked at the clock. Nearly 4 in the morning. You did that in your kitchen. I have done worse in better places. She removed her gloves. His gaze moved over the room, the bloodied gauze and the instrument soaking in a metal bowl. You still practice? No. You just removed a bullet from me. That was a personal favor. I did not ask for one. You arrived unconscious beneath my fire escape. Then I chose efficiently. You chose the nearest address from your investigation file. Dominic did not deny it. Evelyn placed the used instruments into a tray. How much do you know about me enough? That is not an answer. You were a trauma surgeon at St. Catherine Medical Center. Your license was suspended after an emergency procedure. You opened an unregistered clinic 18 months later. Evelyn stopped moving. You know about the clinic? Yes. Who else knows, Marcus? Her voice cooled. Anyone else know? You expect me to believe that I expect you to decide for yourself? Evelyn turned toward him. You had no right to investigate me. No. The answer was immediate. It stole some of the anger from her. She had expected an excuse. Dominic gave her none. Then why did you do it? He looked toward the blood on her sleeve. Because everyone in that lounge saw a woman sitting alone. And you saw something different. I saw someone pretending to be alone. The rain pressed softly against the windows. Evelyn folded her arms. That sounds almost flattering. It was not meant to be. What was it meant to be accurate? She should have disliked him more than she did. He had followed her, investigated her, carried a criminal war to her door. Yet he spoke to her without the false gentleness people used when they wanted her cooperation. There was no pity in him, no attempt to make her smaller so he could feel larger. Only attention, complete and dangerous attention. Evelyn looked away first. You need antibiotics every 8 hours. I will remember. You will stay here until sunrise. That is unnecessary. You can barely sit up. Dominic pushed himself onto one elbow. Pain crossed his face. Evelyn placed one hand against his chest and forced him back down. The movement brought them close. His breath touched her wrist. For one suspended second, neither spoke. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Evelyn felt the change in the room. It was not tenderness, not yet. It was recognition. Two people who understood danger had found a different kind standing between them. She stepped back. $300. Dominic blinked. For what supplies? Medication, cleaning, emotional inconvenience. I can pay more? I did not ask for more. I can replace everything in this apartment. Evelyn's expression hardened. This apartment does not belong to you. Dominic held her gaze. No, he said quietly. It does not. It was the first boundary she placed between them. It was also the first one he accepted without resistance. Evelyn gave him water and an antibiotic, then helped him onto the sofa. He did not complain when she took both of his guns and locked them inside a drawer. He did, however, watch the drawer. You will get them back when you can stand without falling. I can stand. You demonstrated otherwise in the alley. That was temporary. So is your access to the weapons. Dominic closed his eyes. Evelyn moved to the kitchen sink. She scrubbed blood from her hands until the water ran clear. When she turned around, he was watching her. You did not ask who I am, he said. I know who you are. You know my name. That is enough. It usually is. She dried her hands. Dominic Vale, head of the Vale family. Shipping construction clubs, stolen cargo, and enough violence to make people lower their voices when you enter a room. His face revealed nothing. You researched me. I live in Baltimore. That is not the same thing. People talk. People lie. They also bleed. She looked at the closed incision beneath his bandage. That tends to make them honest. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Why did you save me? The question was quieter than the others. Evelyn leaned against the counter. You were dying. That cannot be enough. It has always been enough. For anyone, yes. Even someone you should hate. She thought about the patients who had cursed at her, threatened her, lied to her, and arrived wearing the uniforms of people she distrusted. She thought about the hospital board that had called compassion a liability. If I begin deciding who deserves treatment, she said, then I am no longer practicing medicine. I am practicing judgment. Dominic's eyes remained on her. And you think there is a difference? I have to. He looked toward the dark window. That belief will cost you. It already has. Something passed across his expression, not sympathy, understanding. Before he could speak, his phone vibrated inside the pocket of his ruined coat. Evelyn found it and handed it to him. The screen was cracked. One message waited. A photograph of Evelyn entering the Black Harbor. Another photograph followed. Her apartment building. Then the entrance to the underground clinic. Beneath the images were 6 words. The doctor should have stayed buried. Dominic sat up. The movement tore a breath from him, but he ignored the pain. Pack a bag. Evelyn took the phone from his hand and read the message again. No. His eyes hardened. She knows where you live. She knew before you arrived. She knows about the clinic. That does not mean I abandon it. It means you leave before she sends someone. My patients know where to find me. So does Vanessa Crow. Evelyn placed the phone on the table. I have people depending on that clinic. They can return when this is over. You think fear waits politely outside a locked door? Dominic stood. His legs nearly failed, but he caught the arm of the sofa. Evelyn moved toward him. Sit down. Pack what you need. You are not listening. This stopped being a discussion when you saved me. Evelyn stepped close enough that he had no choice but to look at her. No, saving you was my choice. What happens to me is still mine. His jaw tightened. She will kill you to reach me. Then stop treating me like something you can move out of the way. Dominic stared at her. For the first time, his control showed a crack. Not anger, fear. It appeared so briefly that another person might have missed it. Evelyn did not. He was not afraid for himself. That realization unsettled her. A red dot appeared on the wall behind Dominic. It moved slowly across the plaster. Evelyn's breath stopped. Dominic saw the reflection in the window. He turned, grabbed her around the waist, and drove them both to the floor. The rifle round shattered the glass above them. The apartment exploded with sound. Glass fell across the carpet. Dominic covered Evelyn with his body as a second shot struck the wall. Dust filled the air. Evelyn looked toward the angle of impact. The shots had come from the east. High position, clear line through the kitchen window. 6th floor, she said. The brick building across the alley. Dominic lifted his head. How do you know the angle is too steep for the 5th floor? Another red dot moved across the broken window frame. Evelyn pushed him aside and crawled toward the kitchen. What are you doing getting us out? She opened the cabinet beneath the counter and reached behind the pipes. Her fingers found a metal lever. She pulled. A section of the kitchen floor released with a dull click. Dominic stared at the square opening. You have an escape tunnel beneath your apartment. I have access to an old maintenance passage. That is not a normal distinction. Neither is being shot at before breakfast. Evelyn lifted the panel. A narrow ladder descended into darkness. The smell of damp stone rose from below. Dominic looked toward the bedroom. My weapons. No time. I am not leaving them. A third round struck the refrigerator. Evelyn opened the drawer, removed both pistols, and handed them to him. Try not to bleed on these, too. He tucked one into his waistband and checked the other. Evelyn grabbed the medical case, a flashlight, and a coat. She lowered herself onto the ladder. Dominic followed. The movement reopened part of his wound. Blood appeared beneath the edge of the bandage. Evelyn saw it when he reached the bottom. You are bleeding again. There are men entering the building. Boots sounded above them. The apartment door shook under a heavy impact. Evelyn closed the floor panel. Darkness swallowed them. The maintenance passage was barely wide enough for Dominic's shoulders. Old brick walls pressed close on both sides. Water ran along the center channel carrying dust and fragments of plaster. Evelyn switched on the flashlight. Stay behind me. Dominic looked past her. You know where this goes? Yes. Where? A utility junction beneath the abandoned rail station. How far? Half a mile. His face tightened. You expect me to walk half a mile. I expected you not to bring a sniper to my apartment. The door above them broke open. Muffled voices entered the kitchen. Dominic raised his pistol toward the ceiling. Evelyn pushed the barrel down. Fire in here, and they know exactly where we are. They will find the opening. Eventually. She moved forward. Dominic followed. The tunnel descended beneath the block. The air grew colder. At several points, Evelyn had to step over collapsed masonry and rusted cables. Behind her, Dominic's breathing became heavier. She slowed. Do not. What slowed down for me? You are recovering from a gunshot wound, and we are being hunted. Both can be true. They reached an iron door covered in mineral stains. Evelyn unlocked it with a key from her medical bag. Dominic watched her. How many people have you moved through here? Enough. Patients. Some. Who were the others? People who could not risk being found. By criminals, Evelyn pulled the door open. Sometimes. Police. She looked back at him. Sometimes the people searching wear badges. Dominic said nothing after that. The passage opened into a larger tunnel beneath the old rail line. Broken tiles covered the walls. Faded signs pointed toward platforms that had been sealed decades earlier. Evelyn led him through a service corridor and into a dark room filled with rusted examination tables. The abandoned public health clinic had once served railroad workers and low-income families. Dust covered the counters. A child's drawing remained taped to one wall. 3 figures stood beneath a yellow sun. The colors had faded, but the words were still visible. "My family is safe here." Dominic read them. Evelyn placed the medical case on an examination table. "Sit." He obeyed this time. She removed the bandage. The outer stitches had pulled, but the deeper closure remained intact. "You were lucky again." Dominic looked around the room. "This is yours." "No, you have keys. I had plans." "What plans?" Evelyn cleaned the wound. "To renovate it. Into another clinic. A legal one." She did not need to explain why it remained abandoned. Dominic understood. The dust, the covered equipment, the boxes of unopened tile near the wall. This was not merely a hiding place. It was the future someone had taken from her. Evelyn replaced the bandage. Dominic looked at the faded child's drawing again. "You should finish it." She laughed once. There was no humor in the sound. "With what license that can be corrected?" Her hand stopped. "You think everything can be corrected because you know people who carry guns?" "No." His voice was calm. "I think people who destroyed evidence can be found." Evelyn looked at him. "What do you know Halcyon Biotech was connected to the medication involved in your case?" "I know who manufactured it. Vanessa Crowe controls Halcyon through 3 holding companies." Silence filled the room. Evelyn stared at him. "That company was investigated by people Halcyon paid. The hospital said there was no contamination. The hospital received $12 million through a charitable foundation 6 weeks after your hearing." Evelyn stepped back. For 3 years she had imagined every possible explanation. Administrative cowardice, corporate negligence, a board protecting its reputation. She had never allowed herself to believe the destruction had been that deliberate. Why would Vanessa care about one surgical report? Because a recall would have exposed more than damaged medication. What else? Fraud, bribery, government contracts, distribution records. Evelyn looked toward the dark cabinets. "You are saying they ruined me to protect a supply chain. I am saying your evidence threatened something larger than your career." Her throat tightened. She turned away before he could see it. Dominic's voice softened. "You were right." The words struck harder than she expected. She had wanted to hear them for years. From the board, from the hospital, from every colleague who stopped answering her calls. Now they came from a man whose hands carried more blood than most operating rooms. Evelyn gripped the edge of the counter. "Being right did not save anything. It saved the woman on your table, and cost me every other patient I could have treated." Dominic stood carefully. "You did not lose those patients because you made the wrong choice." She faced him. "Do not turn this into something noble. I am not. You do not know what happened. I know someone punished you for refusing to let an innocent person die." He moved closer. "That is not the same as failure." Evelyn wanted to argue. Instead, she looked at the faded drawing on the wall. "My family is safe here." A distant metal door opened somewhere in the tunnel. Dominic immediately raised his pistol. Evelyn switched off the flashlight. Footsteps approached. Measured. More than one person. Dominic positioned himself between Evelyn and the doorway. She noticed. "Move." "No, you can barely stand. I can still shoot. You are blocking my view." He glanced back at her. Even in darkness she could feel his irritation. A voice called from the corridor. "Dominic, Marcus." Dominic lowered the weapon slightly. Marcus entered with 2 men behind him. His coat was wet and blood marked one cuff. He looked at Dominic's bandage, then at Evelyn. "You kept him alive." Evelyn closed the medical case. "He made it unnecessarily difficult." "That sounds like him." Dominic looked past Marcus. "Mateo with Lena, alive." Evelyn released a breath. Tyler Marcus nodded. "Also alive. Your nurse moved both of them before Crow's people reached the basement." Evelyn's relief lasted only a second. "Reached the basement. They found the clinic." Her face hardened. What did they do? Destroyed equipment, took records, left a message on the wall. Dominic's voice became cold. What message? Marcus looked at Evelyn. Save him again and everyone dies. No one spoke. The old clinic seemed colder than before. Marcus turned to Dominic. We need to move you. No, Evelyn said. Marcus looked at her. This place is no longer secure. No place is secure if someone inside his organization is feeding Vanessa information. One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. Dominic watched Evelyn. What are you suggesting, that you stop moving like a king with an army and start moving like a patient who does not want to be found? Marcus frowned. What does that mean, no convoys? No visible guards, no black cars waiting outside every door. We protect him by controlling the streets. Evelyn looked at Dominic. And you protect me by frightening every patient away from my clinic. Marcus stepped forward. Your patients are alive because our men arrived. My patients disappeared because armed strangers surrounded the block. Dominic raised one hand. Marcus stopped. Evelyn continued. A pregnant woman left without antibiotics yesterday because she saw your men outside. A boy with an infected wound ran before Lena could examine him. People who come to me do not trust uniforms, badges, or expensive cars. They will return, Marcus said. Some of them cannot afford to wait. Dominic looked at Evelyn. You want the visible security removed. I want protection that does not look like occupation. Marcus shook his head. That exposes her. Dominic's gaze remained on Evelyn. No, he said. It exposes us. Marcus stared at him. Dominic turned toward his guards. Pull the cars from her block. Replace them with plainclothes teams, delivery workers, maintenance crews, people who belong there. Marcus opened his mouth. Dominic's expression stopped him. Do it. Evelyn watched him. You listened. Dominic met her eyes. You were right. She almost smiled. You should be careful. That could become a habit. Do not expect miracles. By evening, the old clinic had become a temporary command post. Maps covered one examination table. Marcus coordinated security through secure phones. Dominic refused pain medication strong enough to cloud his judgment. Evelyn refused to let him stand for more than 10 minutes at a time. They argued over both decisions. Neither won. Near midnight, Marcus received photographs from the clinic. The front door was broken. Equipment lay smashed across the floor. Black paint covered the wall behind the operating table. Save him again, and everyone dies. Evelyn stared at the words. Dominic stood beside her. This is not your fault, he said. It is written on my wall. She did it because of me, and she knew my name before you came to my apartment. Dominic looked toward her. Evelyn folded the photograph in half. Vanessa did not discover me tonight. She remembered me. The thought changed something inside her. For years, she had treated her ruined career as a grave, something finished, something buried. Vanessa's message proved the past had never been dead. It had only been waiting. Evelyn unfolded the photograph and placed it beside the map of Baltimore. Show me every property Vanessa controls. Marcus looked at Dominic. Dominic looked at Evelyn. Why? Because she destroyed my clinic, shot at my apartment, and used my medical case to hide a criminal operation. Her voice remained quiet. That made it more dangerous. I want to understand how she moves. Marcus placed a second map on the table. Ports, storage yards, pharmacies, construction companies, private medical suppliers. Evelyn studied each location. She asked when Vanessa attacked, which targets she chose personally, which buildings she burned, which people she left alive. The pattern appeared slowly. Vanessa did not simply remove obstacles. She created scenes, public humiliation, visible destruction, messages designed to be repeated. Dominic watched Evelyn connect the locations with a marker. She wants an audience, Evelyn said. Marcus leaned over the map. She wants fear. No, fear is the result. Evelyn circled the cold storage yard. What she wants is proof that she defeated him. Dominic's expression darkened. You believe she will come personally, if she thinks the victory is complete. Marcus shook his head. She is too careful. Evelyn looked at him. Careful people still make emotional decisions. What emotion controls her? Evelyn placed Vanessa's photograph at the center of the map. Humiliation. Dominic studied the image. Evelyn drew a line from the Halcyon warehouse to the waterfront. Then she looked at him. "Stop reacting to her." His gaze sharpened. "What are you proposing, that we give her a victory she cannot resist?" Marcus folded his arms. "She will know it is a trap, only if she believes Dominic is the one who designed it." Silence settled over the room. Dominic looked at Evelyn with the same attention he had given her across the Black Harbor. Only now, curiosity had become something deeper. Respect. "What do you need?" he asked. Evelyn pulled the blueprint of the abandoned Halcyon distribution warehouse toward her. A reason for Vanessa Crowe to believe she has already won. Dominic looked down at the blueprint spread across the old examination table. The Halcyon distribution warehouse sat near the Patapsco River, less than 2 miles from the port. It had been abandoned after a chemical fire damaged the eastern loading wing, but the main structure remained intact. 3 floors, 2 loading docks, a refrigerated storage section, an underground drainage channel leading toward the river. Steel walkways crossed the main floor beneath a roof lined with broken skylights. Marcus studied the layout. "Crowe has not used this property in years. That is why she will trust it," Evelyn said. Dominic shifted carefully in his chair. His wound was healing, but every movement still pulled at the stitches. "Explain." Evelyn placed Vanessa's photograph near the center of the blueprint. "She destroyed my career to protect Halcyon. She hid the evidence there. She paid the hospital board, erased the laboratory records, and convinced everyone I was the problem." Her finger moved across the map. "This building is where she buried the truth." Marcus looked at her. "You think that makes her sentimental?" "No." Evelyn circled the main storage floor. "I think it makes her arrogant." Dominic remained silent. Evelyn continued. "She believes this place belongs to her because she has already survived what happened there. If she thinks I am being moved through the warehouse, she will see it as more than an opportunity." "As what?" Marcus asked. "A correction." Dominic's gaze settled on her face. "You want her to come personally. I want her to believe she is walking into the final scene of a story she already controls." Marcus stepped away from the table. "She has enough people to send someone else." "She will send people first," Evelyn said. "But if she believes Dominic is there wounded and desperate, she will follow." Dominic leaned back. "And what makes her believe I would use that warehouse?" Evelyn looked at him. "Because you will appear to have no other choice." The room went quiet. Rain moved through the sealed rail tunnels above them. Water struck the pipes in slow, hollow taps. Marcus folded his arms. "You want to leak his condition?" "Yes." "No." The answer came from Dominic. Evelyn turned toward him. "You asked what I needed, and I heard you. You did not hear all of it. I heard enough." Dominic stood. Pain tightened across his face, but he refused to show more than a single breath. "You are not being used as bait." Evelyn held his gaze. "I am the reason she comes. That does not place you inside the building." "Yes, it does." "No." Marcus looked between them and stepped back. Evelyn moved around the table. "You cannot protect me by removing me from every decision. I can protect you by keeping you away from a woman who has already tried to kill you. She tried to erase me before she ever knew your name mattered to me." Dominic's expression changed slightly. Evelyn heard the words after they left her mouth. "Your name mattered to me." Neither of them acknowledged it. She continued. "If I hide while you finish this, Vanessa remains the person who decides what my life becomes. This is not about pride. No, it is about control." Dominic's voice lowered. "You think I am trying to control you. I think control is the only language you trust." He stepped closer. "And you think walking into a warehouse full of armed men proves you are free?" "No." Evelyn did not move. "It proves I chose the risk myself." For several seconds only the sound of water moved through the room. Dominic looked at the blueprint, then at Vanessa's photograph. Finally he looked back at Evelyn. "What are your conditions?" Marcus turned sharply. "Dominic." "What are they?" Dominic repeated. Evelyn returned to the table. "No civilians inside the perimeter." Dominic nodded once. "No explosives near the medical storage wing. Some of the chemicals could still be unstable." Another nod. "If Vanessa is captured, she remains alive until we know every name connected to Halcyon and the attack at Pier 9. This time, Dominic did not answer. Evelyn watched him. "She tried to kill you," he said. And she failed. She burned your clinic, and killing her before she speaks will not rebuild it. Dominic's jaw tightened. You still believe everyone should be saved? No. Her voice remained quiet. I believe death should not be the easiest answer. He studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at Marcus. If she is captured, she stays alive. Marcus nodded reluctantly. Evelyn folded the blueprint. Dominic stopped her hand with his. One condition of mine. She looked down at his fingers around her wrist, not tight, not possessive, only present. What you follow the plan exactly. Evelyn raised her eyes. So do you. Dominic released her. Agreed. The deception began before dawn. Dominic summoned 3 senior lieutenants separately. Marcus received information about a possible escape route through Pennsylvania. Another lieutenant, Simon Grant, was told Evelyn would be taken to a private airfield west of the city. Caleb Mercer received the warehouse route. Dominic met Caleb alone in a stone office beneath the old bank. No guards stood inside. No weapons were visible. Caleb entered wearing a navy suit and a concerned expression. You should be resting. Dominic sat behind the desk. I have rested enough. Caleb closed the door. How bad is the wound? Bad enough that Vanessa believes I am weak. Caleb's eyes moved toward the bandage beneath Dominic's shirt. She nearly killed you. She nearly did many things. Dominic opened a folder and slid a photograph across the desk. It showed the Halcyon warehouse. Caleb studied it. What is this A route? For what I am moving Evelyn out of Maryland. Caleb looked up. When tomorrow night? Why there? Because the river access is not monitored. Caleb leaned closer to the photograph. You trust the building? No. Then why use it? Because Vanessa expects me to choose a Vale property. Dominic watched every movement in Caleb's face. The slight pause before he answered. The way his eyes returned to the warehouse address. The careful concern in his voice. You should let me handle the transfer. No. Dominic, if Crow knows about the doctor, she will watch every route out of the city. That is why only 4 people know. Caleb leaned back. Who are the other 3? You do not need to know. Something cold passed through Caleb's eyes. It disappeared quickly. Dominic saw it. Caleb stood. I will place men nearby. No visible security. That leaves you exposed. That is the point. Caleb looked at him for another moment. Then he nodded. You taught me never to question a decision in front of the family. Dominic's face remained still. I taught you to question everything before it became a decision. Caleb gave a faint smile. I remember. After he left, Marcus entered through the side door. A receiver in his hand had recorded the conversation. You think he believed it? Dominic looked toward the closed door. I think he wanted to. 6 hours later, a Crow vehicle appeared near the Halcyon warehouse. 2 men photographed the loading docks. A third entered through the damaged eastern wing. By evening, Vanessa moved weapons into a refrigerated truck parked 3 blocks away. Marcus placed the surveillance photographs on the table in the old clinic. Only Caleb knew about Halcyon. Evelyn looked at Dominic. His face revealed nothing. That frightened her more than anger would have. Marcus continued. We traced a call from Caleb's private number to a port office controlled by Crow. Dominic picked up the photograph of Caleb. In it, Caleb stood beside him at a charity dinner 5 years earlier. Both men were younger. Dominic's father had been dead for less than a year. Caleb's hand rested on Dominic's shoulder. They used the same room after my father's funeral, Dominic said. Marcus waited. Dominic placed the photograph down. He told me the family would follow me. Evelyn watched him. You trusted him. I trained him. That is not the same thing. It should have been. Dominic walked toward the dark end of the clinic. Evelyn followed. Marcus remained behind. Dominic stopped beneath the faded drawing on the wall. The yellow sun looked almost gray now. You do not have to pretend it means nothing, Evelyn said. He kept his back to her. I do not pretend. You turn pain into decisions before anyone can see it. That has kept me alive. It has also kept you alone. Dominic turned. The words had found their mark. Evelyn did not apologize. He looked toward the room where Marcus waited. Caleb was there when my father died. You told me. He held the wound closed. He stayed with me after everyone else left the church. And now he sold your movements to Vanessa. Dominic's voice remained calm. Betrayal changes the past. No. Evelyn stepped closer. It changes how the past feels. It does not change what you gave. His eyes narrowed slightly. You think trusting him was not a mistake. I think his betrayal belongs to him. You believe that Evelyn thought about the hospital administrators who had praised her work until protecting her became expensive. She thought about the doctors who had looked away during the hearing. She thought about every unanswered phone call. No, she said, but I am trying to. Dominic looked at her for a long time. The distance between them seemed to disappear without either of them moving. Then Marcus called from the other room. We have another problem. They returned to the table. Marcus placed a phone beside the blueprint. Lena's name appeared on the screen. Evelyn answered. Where are you at the clinic? Evelyn closed her eyes. You were told not to go there, and you were told not to enter a Mafia lounge alone. This is different. It always is when you are the one making the bad decision. Evelyn looked at Dominic. What happened? Someone delivered 3 boxes of supplies, from whom no name. Evelyn already knew. She turned toward Dominic. He looked away with no trace of guilt. Lena continued. Antibiotics, sterile packs, new monitoring leads, and enough gauze to cover half of Baltimore. Do not open anything else. I already checked them. You should not be there. Neither should the 12 people waiting outside. Evelyn's expression changed. What people, Patience? Lena's voice softened. They came back. Evelyn gripped the phone. Are the guards visible? No. There is a city maintenance truck across the street. A food delivery driver has been parked nearby for an hour. I assume they belong to Dominic. Dominic nodded. Lena continued. No black cars, no men standing outside with their hands inside their coats. Evelyn looked at Dominic. He had listened. Again. Keep the clinic open for 2 hours, she said. Then move everyone to where the church basement on Fulton Street. Are you coming? Not tonight? Lena became quiet. What are you doing? Finishing something? That answer sounds like trouble. It usually is. After the call ended, Dominic returned to the blueprint. The warehouse team enters at 11. Evelyn watched him move the markers into position. His orders were concise. Marcus would control the western loading dock. Simon Grant would secure the river exit. 6 shooters would take positions on the elevated walkways. 2 medics would remain outside the perimeter. Caleb would be allowed to believe he still controlled the operation. Evelyn pointed toward the backup generator. This has to be disabled before Vanessa enters. Marcus nodded. We cut power from the control room. No, the generator has a manual override in the refrigeration wing. If she knows the building, she knows that. Dominic looked at Marcus. Put a second team there. Evelyn traced the drainage channel on the map. And leave this open. Marcus frowned. That gives her an escape route. It gives us a route she thinks we forgot. Dominic understood. You want her to move toward the river. The drainage tunnel narrows near the outlet. She cannot take more than 2 people through at once. Marcus placed a marker at the exit. We close it after she enters. The plan grew around Evelyn's observations. She understood movement differently than Dominic's men did. They saw lines of fire. She saw bodies under pressure, where people would run when the lights disappeared, which hand they would use to reach for a weapon, how quickly panic changed breathing, where fear collected in a room. By midnight, the blueprint was covered in notes. Dominic sent everyone away except Evelyn. The clinic became silent. She gathered the surgical tools she planned to carry into the warehouse. A scalpel, a narrow metal probe, gauze, 2 syringes, a bottle of chemical suppressant used in the old fire system. Dominic stood in the doorway. You are afraid. Evelyn did not look up. Yes. The answer seemed to surprise him. You do not look afraid. Fear and panic are not the same thing. You could still leave. She continued cleaning the metal probe. I am aware. I have a car ready, new documents, enough money to disappear anywhere. He placed an envelope on the table. Evelyn opened it. A driver license with another woman's name, a passport, bank information, a photograph of a house somewhere far from Baltimore. She looked at the documents, then tore them in half. Dominic's expression hardened. That identity took effort. I spent 3 years letting other people decide what happened to my life. She placed the torn passport on the table. I am done leaving. Dominic stepped closer. You think staying makes you safe, no. You think standing beside me makes you free, no. Then why Evelyn finally looked at him. Because the first time Vanessa destroyed me, I had no idea she was in the room. She placed the metal probe inside her medical bag. This time I want her to see me. Dominic reached toward her face. His hand stopped before touching her. The hesitation was so unlike him that Evelyn felt it more deeply than contact. He was giving her the choice. She closed the distance. Their first kiss began softly. No violence, no demand. Only the careful pressure of two people who had spent too long expecting every touch to become a threat. Then the restraint broke. Dominic's hand moved to the back of her neck. Evelyn gripped the front of his shirt, careful of the wound, but unwilling to let him retreat. The kiss carried the tension of the lounge, the kitchen floor, the tunnel, and every argument neither had truly wanted to win. When they separated, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. His breathing was uneven. "If this goes wrong," he said, "it will not." "That was not what I was going to say." "I know." His eyes opened. "If it goes wrong, I am coming for you." "No." The answer was immediate. "You follow the plan. I will not watch her take you, and I will not become the excuse you use to destroy the plan." Dominic stepped back. He did not promise. Evelyn knew he would not. At 11:40 the following night, the Halcyon warehouse rose beside the river like the shell of a dead machine. Fog covered the loading yard. Broken windows reflected the distant lights of the port. Evelyn arrived in a white medical transport van. She wore a dark coat over body armor. Her medical bag hung from one shoulder. Dominic waited inside the control room above the main floor. A clear wall of reinforced glass gave him a view of the warehouse. Marcus checked Evelyn's earpiece. "You hear me?" "Yes." 2 taps means retreat. I remember. 3 taps means the building is compromised. I remember that too. Marcus looked at her. "You do not have to prove anything." Evelyn opened the van door. "I am not here to prove it." She stepped into the fog. Inside the warehouse, a single overhead light burned above the main floor. Rows of steel shelving disappeared into darkness. Old Halcyon boxes sat beneath layers of dust. The company logo remained printed on the walls. Evelyn walked to the center of the light and placed her medical bag on the floor. Dominic's voice entered her earpiece. "You are in position." She looked toward the control room. His silhouette stood behind the glass. "So are you." Headlights appeared outside. One vehicle, then another. 3 black cars entered the yard. A refrigerated truck followed. Marcus spoke quietly. 12 armed men. Crow is in the second car. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She slowed her breathing. The loading door opened. Vanessa Crow entered in a white coat that reached her knees. She did not carry a visible weapon. Caleb walked beside her. The sight of him changed something in Dominic's posture above. Vanessa stopped at the edge of the light. Her gaze moved over Evelyn. "You always did have a talent for standing in places you did not belong." The voice reached into Evelyn's memory. A disciplinary hearing. A privacy screen near the back of the room. A woman speaking softly to the hospital attorney. Evelyn had never seen her face clearly. Now she knew. "You were there," Evelyn said. Vanessa smiled. "I was everywhere." Caleb looked toward the control room, but the glass had been darkened from inside. Vanessa approached. "You were supposed to disappear after the medical board finished with you. I tried. And yet here you are." Evelyn looked around the warehouse, standing inside the evidence. Vanessa's smile faded slightly. "There is no evidence left. You kept the building. Buildings are useful. So are memories." Vanessa stepped into the light. "You still think this was about one damaged batch of medication? How many patients received it?" Vanessa tilted her head. "Does the number change anything? It changes how many families deserve the truth." "Truth." Vanessa almost laughed. "Truth is what survives after everyone with power finishes speaking." Evelyn's hands remained at her sides. "You paid the hospital. I paid frightened men to protect their careers. You erased laboratory reports. I removed a business problem. You destroyed my name." Vanessa's eyes became cold. "You did that yourself when you confused skill with authority." Inside the control room, Dominic's hand tightened around his weapon. Marcus watched Caleb's position. Evelyn asked the question she had carried for 3 years. How many? Vanessa looked at the halcyon boxes. Enough to make the recall expensive. The answer entered Evelyn without heat. Her anger became still, precise. Vanessa moved closer. You saved one woman and imagined that made you dangerous. No. Evelyn glanced toward the dark glass above. I was dangerous before that. Vanessa followed her gaze. Dominic investigated you because he saw something useful. Evelyn said nothing. He does not love, he acquires. Vanessa's voice softened. You are a weapon he has not finished understanding. Evelyn looked back at her. He tried. Vanessa smiled. And you believe you changed him? No. Evelyn reached inside her coat. Caleb raised his gun. Evelyn's hand emerged, holding a small remote. I believe he changed himself. She pressed the button. The lights died. Gunfire erupted from the elevated walkways. Vanessa's men scattered. Muzzle flashes cut through the darkness. The western loading door slammed shut. Marcus locked the river exit. Evelyn dropped behind a steel cart as bullets tore into the floor. Dominic fired from the control room. One of Vanessa's men fell beside the refrigeration wing. For 12 seconds, the plan worked perfectly. Then the backup generator roared to life. Red emergency lights flashed across the warehouse. Caleb stood beside the manual control panel. He had reached it before Marcus's second team. The warehouse returned in broken pieces of crimson light. Additional gunmen emerged from the refrigerated truck outside. They entered through the eastern loading wing. Marcus's voice filled Evelyn's earpiece. 3 taps. Building compromised. Evelyn looked toward the control room. Caleb had anticipated the trap. He knew where Dominic's shooters would be. He knew the backup routes. He knew Marcus's position. Crow's men fired toward the upper walkways. One Vale shooter fell. Another dropped behind the railing. Dominic left the control room. Evelyn heard him order Marcus to seal the eastern wing. Then someone struck Marcus from behind. His radio went silent. Evelyn moved between the shelves. A hand caught her coat. She turned and drove her elbow into the attacker's throat. He stumbled. She struck the nerve above his wrist and took his weapon before he recovered. 2 shots sounded near the loading dock. Dominic appeared through the red light. He fired toward the upper platform. Evelyn, I am here. Move to the drainage route. No, that is an order, and you already know how I feel about those. A scream cut through the warehouse. Evelyn froze. Lena was dragged into the light. Vanessa held a pistol beneath her jaw. Blood ran from Lena's temple. Evelyn stared at her. Lena should have been at the church basement. She should have been nowhere near the warehouse. Vanessa smiled. Your nurse followed you. Lena's eyes found Evelyn. I told you, she said through a strained breath. You make bad decisions. Vanessa tightened her grip. Above them, Caleb emerged inside the control room with a gun pressed against Marcus's head. Dominic raised his weapon toward Vanessa. Caleb pressed the barrel harder against Marcus. Lower it, Caleb called. Dominic did not move. Vanessa looked at Evelyn. You wanted to save everyone. The remaining gunfire faded. Both sides waited. The warehouse became silent except for the generator and Lena's uneven breathing. Vanessa moved the pistol against Lena's throat. Let us test that. Evelyn stepped out from behind the shelving. Dominic saw her. His expression became lethal. Stay back. Evelyn ignored him. Vanessa's gaze moved between them. So this is the woman who taught the king to listen. Evelyn lowered the weapon in her hand. Vanessa smiled. Drop it. The gun struck the floor. Dominic took one step forward. Caleb pulled Marcus closer. Do not. Vanessa looked toward Dominic, then back at Evelyn. Choose. Evelyn's pulse beat slowly beneath her jaw. Vanessa lifted the pistol slightly. Your king or your patient? Lena took one shallow breath, then another. Her eyes remained on Evelyn. 3 short breaths. A pause. The signal they used during difficult procedures when words could not be spoken. Evelyn understood. Dominic raised his weapon by less than an inch. Evelyn did not look at him. Stay where you are. His face changed. Every instinct in him demanded movement. Every lesson his father had taught him demanded control. But the warehouse no longer belonged to the man with the largest army. It belonged to the person Vanessa still underestimated. Dominic slowly lowered his gun. Vanessa laughed. Look at that. The great Dominic Vale finally trained. Evelyn kept her eyes on Lena. No. Her hand moved toward the medical bag at her feet. He listened. Vanessa's smile thinned. For one moment, no one moved. The red emergency lights washed the warehouse in pulses. Lena stood rigid beneath Vanessa's arm. Marcus remained trapped in the control room above with Caleb's gun against his head. Dominic held his weapon low, every muscle in his body fighting the command Evelyn had given him. Evelyn kept her eyes on Lena. 3 shallow breaths. A pause. Then one more. The signal was clear. Lena was ready. Vanessa tilted her head. "You still think you are in control?" "No," Evelyn said. "I think you are holding a woman who is about to collapse." Vanessa glanced at Lena. Lena's face had gone pale. Her knees trembled. "She is frightened. She has a cardiac condition." Vanessa laughed softly. "You expect me to believe that Evelyn moved one careful step closer. You do not have to believe me. Watch her breathing." Lena drew in a broken breath. Her body sagged. Vanessa adjusted her grip and pulled her upright. Evelyn saw the pistol shift away from Lena's throat. "Only an inch." "Enough." "She is going into an arrhythmia," Evelyn said. "If she loses consciousness, she becomes dead weight. You will not be able to hold her and aim at the same time." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "You are lying. I lie better when I am not watching someone's lips turn blue." Lena let her eyes roll back. Her knees folded. Vanessa cursed and tightened her arm around Lena's chest. The gun moved again. Evelyn dropped to one knee, opened the medical bag, and pulled out a glass vial. Vanessa raised the pistol. Evelyn threw the vial at the concrete between them. It shattered. A thick cloud of chemical suppressant burst upward. Vanessa fired. The bullet passed above Evelyn's shoulder. Lena dropped flat and rolled toward the steel shelving. Evelyn moved into the smoke. Dominic fired at the control room lock. The reinforced glass cracked. Caleb dragged Marcus backward. Dominic shot again. The lock exploded from the frame. Marcus drove his head into Caleb's face and twisted away from the gun. The 2 men crashed into the control panel. Below them, Vanessa struck blindly through the smoke. Her hand found Evelyn's coat. She pulled hard. Evelyn stumbled forward and felt the pistol press against her ribs. She trapped Vanessa's wrist with both hands and turned before the trigger could be pulled. The gun fired into the floor. Concrete burst beneath their feet. Vanessa drove her knee into Evelyn's stomach. Pain folded Evelyn in half. Vanessa tore free and disappeared into the chemical cloud. "Evelyn," Dominic's voice came from somewhere beyond the smoke. "I am here," she called. A shot answered from the upper level. Caleb and Marcus were fighting along the walkway. Caleb struck Marcus across the jaw with the pistol. Marcus hit the railing and nearly fell. Dominic aimed upward, but Caleb pulled Marcus in front of him. "You should have died at the cold storage yard," Caleb shouted. Dominic moved toward the staircase. "You should have chosen a better buyer." Caleb laughed. "She offered me more than money." "What did she offer?" "A place that was mine." Dominic climbed one step at a time. "You had one." "No. I had a chair at your table. A title you could take away whenever you wanted. I trusted you. You owned me." Dominic stopped halfway up the stairs. "You stood beside me when my father died, and after that I spent 13 years becoming useful to you." Caleb pressed the gun harder against Marcus. "I was always useful, never equal." Dominic's face became still. "That was not my decision. It was the only decision that mattered." Caleb fired. Marcus twisted aside. The bullet struck the railing. Dominic returned fire. The shot hit the steel near Caleb's hand. Caleb flinched, lost his grip on Marcus, and ran toward the western walkway. Dominic followed. On the warehouse floor, the smoke began to thin. Evelyn saw Lena crawling behind a stack of old halcyon crates. "Stay down," Evelyn said. Vanessa appeared from the red haze with a knife in her hand. The pistol was gone. Her white coat was stained gray from the suppressant. "You should have stayed buried," she said. Evelyn reached into her medical bag and closed her hand around the narrow metal probe. Vanessa lunged. Evelyn stepped aside. The knife cut through her sleeve and opened the skin beneath. Heat ran down her forearm. Vanessa turned quickly and attacked again. This time, the blade caught Evelyn across the shoulder. Evelyn struck Vanessa's wrist. The knife remained in her hand. Vanessa drove Evelyn backward into a metal shelf. Boxes fell around them. Old glass bottles shattered on the floor. "You think saving people makes you strong," Vanessa said. She pressed the blade toward Evelyn's throat. Evelyn held Vanessa's wrist with both hands. No. Her arms began to shake. I think it tells me exactly where to cut. She released one hand, drove 2 fingers into the nerve above Vanessa's elbow, and turned sharply. Vanessa's arm weakened. The blade slipped away from Evelyn's neck. Evelyn twisted beneath it and struck the side of Vanessa's wrist with the metal probe. The knife fell. Vanessa hit her across the face. Evelyn stumbled into the shelf. Vanessa grabbed her hair and dragged her toward the medical storage wing. Lena reached for the fallen pistol. One of Crow's men emerged from behind a support column and aimed at her. Before he could fire, Marcus shot him from the upper walkway. He had blood on his mouth and one hand pressed against his ribs. "Move," he shouted. Lena grabbed the pistol and crawled behind cover. Vanessa shoved Evelyn through the storage room door. The room smelled of dust chemicals and old paper. Halcyon labels covered the shelves. Some boxes remained sealed. Others had been opened years earlier and abandoned. Vanessa kicked the door shut. "You wanted the truth," she said. "Look around." Evelyn wiped blood from her mouth. "How many people did you kill to protect this?" Vanessa picked up the knife from the floor. "I protected an empire. You protected invoices. I protected power." Vanessa approached slowly. "People like you always misunderstand the world. You think being right matters. You think saving one life gives you authority over everyone who profits from death." Evelyn backed toward a steel cart. "No. What do you think? I think you talk too much when you're afraid." Vanessa attacked. Evelyn caught her wrist, but the knife sliced her palm. They collided with the cart. Metal instruments scattered across the floor. Vanessa pushed Evelyn against the wall and drove her forearm into Evelyn's throat. "You are not special," Vanessa said. "You were a problem. Then you became a tool Dominic could use against me." Evelyn struggled for air. Vanessa leaned closer. "When this is over, he will return to his world, and you will discover that men like him do not build futures. They build cages." Evelyn looked into her eyes. "Then you never understood him." Vanessa smiled. "And you do know." Evelyn drove her knee into Vanessa's leg. "But I understand choice." Vanessa lost balance. Evelyn turned, trapped the knife arm, and forced it across the edge of the steel cart. The weapon fell. Vanessa struck Evelyn's ribs. Evelyn absorbed the pain, stepped behind her, and pressed the metal probe against the nerve near her shoulder. She drove it in with controlled force. Vanessa gasped. Her right arm dropped. The fingers opened and closed without strength. She spun with her left hand and clawed at Evelyn's face. Evelyn blocked the strike and kicked the side of Vanessa's knee. Vanessa fell against the shelves. Boxes crashed around her. She tried to rise. Evelyn placed one shoe against her injured arm and held the probe near her neck. Vanessa breathed hard. "You will not kill me." "No, because you are still a doctor." Evelyn's voice was steady. "Because you are going to give me every name connected to Halcyon." Vanessa laughed through the pain. "You think Dominic will let me leave this room alive?" The door opened. Dominic stood there. Blood marked his shirt where his wound had reopened. His pistol was aimed at Vanessa. Evelyn saw his expression and stepped between them. "Move." "No." "She tried to kill you." She failed. Dominic's gaze moved to the blood on Evelyn's arm. His finger tightened on the trigger. Vanessa watched them from the floor. "She is right," Vanessa said. "Men like you do not forgive." Dominic ignored her. "Evelyn did not lower the probe. You promised. She burned your clinic. You promised." She put a gun against Lena's throat, "and she will answer for it." Dominic stepped closer. "She will." The threat in his voice made the room colder. Evelyn held his gaze. "Not like this." For several seconds, neither moved. Dominic had spent his life making decisions before anyone else could make them for him. Control had kept him alive. Control had built his empire. Control had also nearly cost him the only person who had ever looked at him without fear or obedience. Slowly, he lowered the pistol. Vanessa's expression changed. The victory she expected disappeared. Dominic had not surrendered to Evelyn. He had chosen to trust her. Marcus entered behind him and pulled Vanessa to her feet. Her injured arm hung uselessly at her side. Caleb Dominic asked. "Alive," Marcus said. "For now." Dominic looked at Evelyn. She understood the answer hidden in those 2 words. Caleb had fallen from the western walkway and broken his leg. Dominic could have shot him as he tried to crawl toward the loading dock. He had not. He had kept his promise twice. Lena entered the room and wrapped gauze around Evelyn's arm. "You are bleeding. So are you. Mine is less dramatic. You pretended to have a cardiac episode." Lena tied the bandage tighter than necessary. "You once told me fear and panic are not the same thing." Evelyn winced. "I regret teaching you that." Vanessa was taken to a secure Vale property beneath the old bank. Caleb was placed in the room beside her. They were questioned separately. By sunrise, the first names began to appear: hospital administrators, shipping officials, a state investigator, 2 pharmaceutical executives, a port supervisor, 3 officers who had buried reports. Halcyon had distributed contaminated medication through clinics across Maryland and Virginia. When complaints surfaced, Vanessa paid to alter records and intimidate witnesses. Evelyn's case had not been an isolated injustice. It had been the cleanest cover story. Vanessa's files contained laboratory reports, payment records, and copies of the original hospital communications. Dominic arranged for selected evidence to reach federal investigators through an attorney with no visible connection to the Vale family. He did not do it to become innocent. He did it because Evelyn had asked for the truth to survive. 3 months later, the Maryland Medical Board reopened her case. The hearing took place in the same building where her name had been destroyed. This time, the missing laboratory records were displayed on a large screen. The hospital attorney who had called her reckless refused to meet her eyes. The board restored her license. Reporters waited outside. Evelyn stepped through the doors and paused beneath the afternoon sun. Lena stood at the bottom of the stairs. Mateo and Tyler waited beside her. Dominic remained across the street near a black car. He did not approach. He had learned that some victories belonged entirely to the person who earned them. Evelyn crossed the street. "You are staring again." "I was trying to be respectful. You were failing. Frequently." She looked at the envelope in his hand. "What is that?" Dominic gave it to her. Inside were ownership documents for the abandoned public health clinic beneath the rail station. The building belonged to a new foundation, the Hart Community Trauma Center. Evelyn read every page. "You bought the property. I bought the building. The foundation is in my name. Yes, you have no controlling interest. No." She looked up. "No conditions, one." Her expression tightened. Dominic almost smiled. "You allow me to visit." Evelyn closed the folder. "That depends on whether you pay your medical bill. I paid it. You sent $300,000. I misunderstood the decimal. You do not misunderstand decimals. I was weak from blood loss. 3 months later, the recovery was difficult. The clinic opened before winter. Bright lights replaced the broken fixtures. Fresh paint covered the walls. The child's drawing remained framed near the entrance. My family is safe here. Lena became the nursing director. Tyler volunteered twice a week. Mateo repaired the old service elevator and refused payment. Patients entered without being questioned about identification insurance or the reasons they feared hospitals. Dominic provided security under Evelyn's rules. No visible weapons, no intimidation, no interference with patients. One afternoon, Marcus told a new guard that disrespecting the clinic was the same as disrespecting Dominic. Evelyn heard him. "No." Marcus looked toward her. "No. They respect the rules because they are the rules. Not because I belong to him." Dominic stood behind Marcus. He considered the correction, then nodded. Understood. Several months later, at 2:13 in the morning, Evelyn returned to the Black Harbor. The same blue light glowed beneath the bar. The same jazz record turned slowly. Dominic sat in the corner where he had first watched her. There were no files on the table, no armed men beside him, only 2 glasses of tequila. Evelyn sat across from him. "You are staring again. I am allowed." "Who decided that you did, when the 4th time you came back?" "This is the 2nd time I have been here." Dominic slid a glass toward her. "You came back to me before you came back to the bar." Evelyn looked at him for a moment. Then she took the tequila. "Do you regret saving me?" he asked. She considered the question. "I regret the rug. I replaced it." "You chose the wrong color. I can replace it again. That is not the point." Dominic smiled. "No, it rarely is with you." He reached across the table, then stopped before touching her hand. Evelyn closed the distance herself. Their fingers intertwined. Outside rain began to fall over Baltimore. Months earlier, Dominic had watched Evelyn because he believed she was a mystery he could solve. Now he understood that loving her did not mean possessing the answer. It meant standing beside her while she chose who she wanted to become. Evelyn finished her tequila. Dominic rose and offered his hand. "You know I do not need an escort," she said. "I know." "Then why are you offering?" His voice was low. "Because I want to walk beside you." Evelyn took his hand. Together they left the Black Harbor. Not as a king and the woman he claimed, not as a criminal and the doctor who saved him. As two dangerous people who had finally learned that trust was not surrender. It was a choice.